Good morning. Welcome to our Sunday service for July 12. Our guest speaker this morning is going to be Don Hostetler, and his sermon will be called The View from 90. Don turned 90 years old on the 4th of July, just last week. And every 5 years, he has given us a sermon on what life is like from a higher and higher mountain peak in terms of experience and perspective and entropy. So this is his 7th such sermon, and we all hope that there will be an 8th and a 9th and a 10th. We'll see. Don and Betty Hostetler are the last remaining attendees of the first service of the Unitarian Fellowship of Augusta in 1954, more of a meeting than a service. And he has been an active participant ever since, including 7 terms as president and over 100 Sunday sermons. They are the last surviving patriarch and matriarch of our little tribe. There will be a discussion after the service at 12:30. And if you haven't registered for it, please do. You can register with Mindy Gales. If you need a link for that, I'll be able to post it in the chat link to the right of your screen during the service. Our opening hymn this morning is Tranquil Stream, number 145. Please feel free to sing or hum along in body or spirit as you are able. Thank you, David and Ruth Pendergrast. After our service today, we're going to gather virtually for coffee and conversation, as we've always done, and finding a way to do it, except you'll be bringing your own coffee. And at 12:30, we're going to have a breakout discussion for those who are interested in talking to Don Hostetler about the old days or about what it's like to be 90 years old. For our chalice lighting, these are the words of Lisa Doege. Why a flaming chalice? The question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer. A cup of blessings overflowing, a cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst, a cup of wine for celebration and dedication, the flame of truth, the fire of purification, oil for anointing and healing, and out of chaos and fear and horror. Thus was the symbol crafted a generation ago. So may it be for us in these days of uncertainty, sorrow, and rage, and a light to warm our souls and guide us home. words is the heart of our faith. These are the words of Monica Jacobson Tennyson. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to make that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of your faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together. This is the time of our service where we offer our joys and sorrows for each other, and for all mankind at this time. We offer a stone for everybody, especially in our country right now, which is going through such fertile and vivid and wild transformation. What an opportunity our country has to improve if only we can come together and make this an important time in history. A stone for all of our hopes and for all of our difficulties at this important and transformative time in America. A stone for all of us, all the unspoken joys and sorrows that we share as we think of these things today. We have a joy and a sorrow from Dan Cooper, our tech guy, the guy behind the camera right over there. Dan had a car accident yesterday that has totaled the car, and they may need to be a one-car family, which is really difficult these days. But Dan's family has much gratitude. Dan is going to be okay physically, and please keep us in your thoughts. Also, Dan's dog died yesterday. As Shakespeare said, when sorrows come, they come not single spies, but in battalions. Remember Dan in your thoughts. I'd like to join together in a moment, 1 minute of silence, on our meditation together. This is a special service. This is Don Hostetler and Betty have been with all of us, really from the beginning. No matter what day you joined, no matter how many years ago, you remember them. And as I say, we hope we'll have many more services from them. As we begin our meditation together, our spoken words are from Shakespeare. Sonnet number 73. That time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves or none or few do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold. Bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self that seals up all the rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long. 1 minute of silence. This is the time in our service when, as members of our church, we ask that we all support and remember our pledge and take care of this institution at a time when it needs your help until we can get to the end of all this that we're going through right now. These are the words of Erica A. Hewitt, what we say yes to. The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something that we value. With our gifts, freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith, and may our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. The link for the offering will be on your screen. Our reading this morning is a poem by Mary Oliver. This is a poem familiar to some of us. This is called When Death Comes. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity and wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, toward silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride, married to amazement. I was the bridegroom, taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. And now our guest speaker, Don Hostetler, The View from 90.
My 90th birthday was greeted with fireworks, but all my birthdays are greeted with fireworks, as I was born on the 4th of July. Back in 1990, when I thought 60 was old, I presented The View from 60. And for good or ill, I have updated my view every 5 years. Will there be a view from 95? The odds are against me. When I was 60, I could look ahead 10, 20, even 30 years. Now that I am 90, the view is in single digits. I've stood in this pulpit many times. Never in my wildest imagination did I think that I would stand here and speak to an empty church. but every view now is seen through the haze of COVID-19. That something like the coronavirus arrived is not a surprise. What is a surprise is that the United States, a world leader in science, would, unlike other major industrialized powers, be unable to control it. You've heard enough about COVID, so I'll leave it at that for another time and go on with my 70th five-year view. We in all life are on a journey not of our choosing. Our existence is the result of the actions of our parents, who are the major factor in our journey as our journey starts. The length of the journey is finite, 0 to a maximum of 119 according to the Social Security life table. However, the journey can end at anywhere along the way. You can view it as a journey up and down a mountain. The altitude represents the combination of factors and has no numerical value. It measures knowledge, reasoning ability, physical strength, hopes and dreams, and so on. We know the vertical value is 0 at the beginning and end. Therefore, by an axiom of mathematics, it has to increase with time, reach one or more peaks, and then begin to decline. The journey starts at birth. Nothing is quite as helpless as the newborn babies. They are completely dependent on adults for their survival. But as they grow and develop and learn, as they go up the mountain, it's a period of developing skills and acquiring of knowledge. It's a period of dreams and goals and unlimited time. Young adults are occupied with establishing a career and raising children and reaching the top. The top of the mountain represents a divide in one's life. I suggest that the view from the top is one's introduction to middle age, when one goes over the hill, so to speak. Up to this point, the view is up. Dreams are active. Goals are out there to be realized. But now we come to a more realistic view of the future. So reaching the top can be a disappointing shock. Now we see the other side of the mountain. One cannot sugarcoat the view, because off in the distance at an uncertain distance is death. For those of us in the scientific worldview, the end of our journey. For those still in the ancient worldview, the hope of heaven or nirvana or paradise. Death. For teenagers, death is something remote that happens to old people, and they typically live as though they were immortal, which can cause much anguish to parents. For young adults, death is also remote, involving grandparents and sometimes parents. But being busy with careers and children, they have little time to contemplate it. In our 40s, acquaintances our own age begin to appear in obituaries. I remember saying goodbye to a fellow worker on Friday and attending his funeral on Monday. As we continue to age, we draw closer and closer to the precipice. At 90, one is on the edge, and death is always lurking. I have never been conscious of fearing death or of being concerned about what would happen after death. I attribute this to my early introduction to the scientific worldview and learning about how life evolves and how life works. When I was maybe 10, I learned about dinosaurs at school and realized that something was inconsistent with what I was being taught in Sunday school. So I asked my mother about it, and she told me that many of the Bible stories were myths, not to be taken literally, but were there to teach a lesson of some sort. About this time, I received my first book about astronomy and became fascinated with the universe and everything in it, and have been, along with John Wheeler, at home in the universe. Once the Big Bang happens, everything in the universe, from atoms to Zen, that is, from matter to ideas, from neurons to consciousness, is understandable as the interaction of matter and energy. Our ancestors, at the time the dogmas of many current religions were being formed, did not have this knowledge, so they invented, with no basis, the many creation stories. They saw their deceased loved ones in their dreams and logically assumed that their spirits were surviving death. Science has clearly demonstrated that mind requires a brain, and when the brain is damaged, so is the mind. So we have no evidence for any part of us surviving, but that we enter eternal rest, one of the euphemisms that appears in obituaries. I find this comforting. To me, being condemned to exist forever as the disembodied spirit seems to be a good definition of hell. So I see no need for and no evidence for anything beyond the natural, and no evidence for what Peter Atkins called a benevolent intercessor who cares about humans. The older I have grown, the stronger this belief has become. At 90, looking at the world around me, for example, the coronavirus, I do not see how one can put any faith in the supernatural being who cares about us. We are on our own. We hold our future in our hands. We have the knowledge to deal with it. I wish I thought that we would use it. We are left with one ultimate question that neither science nor theology can answer. One way of putting it, why is there something rather than nothing? What happened before the Big Bang? Ursula Goodenough had an existential shudder and decided the only way out was a covenant with mystery. I've found no better way, so I have made a covenant with mystery, and just start with the fact that we are here. In the sacred depths of nature, a book in my Bible, Goodenough asks the question, does death have any meaning? And answers it. Well, yes, it does. Sex without death gets you single-celled algae and fungi. Sex with a mortal body gets you the rest of the multicellular creatures. Death is the price we pay to have trees and clams and birds and grasshoppers. And death is the price paid to have human consciousness, to be aware of that shimmering awareness and all that love. My father lived an effective life full out. In his 83rd year, he woke up one morning, went to the grocery store, bought groceries for himself and his brother-in-law, came home, ate lunch, lay down, and died, the way I would like to go. My mother had a different fate. She developed dementia and moved down toward 0 while still alive. It is this drawn-out ending that we fear, not dying. Up to recently, we have had little choice in about the end either. But things are changing. I support Compassion and Choices, a nonprofit organization committed to helping everyone have a best death possible. Now 8 states allow individuals to decide when they die, and numerous hospices provide the option of spending one's last days at home with medicines to relieve pain. So how can one deal with living on the edge of the precipice? Follow the trite but wise suggestion, one day at a time. As long as I am reasonably good health, when I lie down to sleep at night, I expect to wake up in the morning and the next morning. I expect to celebrate Betty's 90th birthday in August and Christmas with my family in December. But I don't invest in any life memberships, and I renew my subscriptions 1 year at a time. I find a lot of concerns depressing, but that I will die is not one of them. When I do, I will be the only one who doesn't know it. I've defined 6 areas in which I think are keys to dealing with aging. For those of you still ascending the mountain, until you have reached the top, the divide, be gentle with and non-judgmental of those of us who have. If we seem negative or pessimistic or resigned or less enthusiastic or standing in the way of progress, we may be looking from a different perspective and will have been things you have seen, things you have not. So give us credit for still being here, trying to help. You can learn from observing us as we go on ahead. Those of us on the downside have some responsibilities too, especially since we've been on both sides. But one has to experience many things personally. We can tell you there's nothing at the top, but this is one journey you have to make. And while many things can't be done, many things have been accomplished by people who have been told that they couldn't. 3, as we age, we tend to move to the side and back and become observers. So take the initiative and notice us. We may have something interesting to say, and if we keep repeating the same story, try to find out why. Even independent elders may need help, but we are almost surely will hesitate to ask. So offer us your help. 4th, help us die with dignity. During the past 65 years, quite a few members have faded out of view, some with a specific illness, some with increasing frailty. Some did not want any attention, most probably did. It's not easy to deal with a dying person or a person with dementia. It's even harder to visit someone who knows they are dying, but it is usually appreciated if done appropriately. Talk as you would if they were well, and remember what they have done. If they want to talk about dying, let them bring it up. 5. Then I say, especially to the young, when one of us passes over the edge, come and help say goodbye. If you've been turned off by experiences at funerals, you may find a UU memorial service can be uplifting and positive. Finally, the advice is often do not dwell on death. My suggestion is dwell on death, but not to excess, but enough so that you see it as a fact of life. Sometimes something that is on down the mountain. When someone is late and you are worried, or when the phone rings in the middle of the night and is thankfully a wrong number, think about what you would do if your fears had become true. While it is foolish to dwell on death excessively, it is equally foolish not to come to terms with it. This would be a good stopping point. My personal view of my 90 years, but I have a little more I want to say. My cup has the inscription, "For peace of mind, resign as general manager of the universe." I'm going to violate the peace of mind advice and give you my view of the state of the world and a few thoughts for you use. We live in a finite world with finite resources. Finite oil, gas, iron, copper, cobalt, arable land, fresh water, fish, and yes, finite sand. A finite world with finite resources can support a finite number of E. coli and sunfish and foxes and lemming, and though most ignore it, a finite number of humans. All ecosystems have a carrying capacity, the maximum population that can be supported long term, and we have already exceeded that population. Yet I just read 2 articles in which the Chinese and the Norwegians want more babies to support their aging population. Here we have a beautiful example of the 2 horns of a dilemma with no desirable answer. Our choices: 1, learn to live with an aging population. 2, continue to let humans further exceed the carrying capacity. Only the first is a viable option, however unpleasant. I have driven here in my air-conditioned car, from my air-conditioned home in my air-conditioned car, guided by GPS instructions on my cell phone. I stand here with a mechanical aortic valve in my heart, without which I would not have been able to see the view from 70, and a pacemaker without which there would have been no view from 80. These things are possible for one reason and one reason alone: the scientific process, which gives us a very detailed understanding of how the body works. It is also the understanding that has led us overpopulate the world and use resources at an unsustainable rate. Thus, the scientific knowledge is an enabling power to do either good or bad, but it carries no instructions on how to use it. Many years ago, the Unitarian minister from Charlotte, Sidney Freeman, came down and preached a number of times. I'll always remember one statement he made. Do not use your power before you have it. You youths are a tiny minority and have no power, so you must work with others. You youths now emphasize diversity and tolerance and seek good in all religions. But I really would like to point out that most of the problems we face are made more difficult to solve because most of the people of the world make decisions based on religious beliefs that were developed before we understood how the world works. 2,000 years ago, if women had practiced birth control and had only 2 children, Homo sapiens would have gone out of existence. Today, unless women start having less than 2 children, life will become very unpleasant. My suggestion, be sure that those you tolerate deserve to be tolerated. The physicist Richard Feynman tells the story. On a trip to Honolulu, we visited a Buddhist temple. The man in charge explained a bit about the Buddhist religion for tourists and then ended his talk by telling us he had something to say that we would never forget, and I have never forgotten it. It was a parable of the Buddhist religion. To every person is given a key to the gates of heaven. The same key opens the gates of hell. As you go forward, be sure you approach the right gate.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words. With flowers and sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow with the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
closing words this morning are a poem by Charles Farley. This is called Young and Old. When all the world is young, lad, and all the trees are green, and every goose a swan, lad, and every lass a queen, then hey for boot and horse, lad, and round the world away. Young blood must have its course, lad, and every dog his day. When all the world is old, lad, and all the trees are brown, and all the sport is stale, lad, and all the wheels run down, creep home and take your place there, the spent and maimed among. God grant you find one face there you loved when all was young.